Hello, Bob Scheffler, Pricom Design. Today we're going to talk about how to set up and configure your layout lighting solution from Pricom. What we have here is actually set up our layout lighting starter kit. Starter kit includes the layout lighting mainboard, two of our DC PNET DC power controllers. Those are really dimmer drivers that drive LED strips. We've got white LED strips, we've got red, green, blue LED strips, we've got another set of white LED strips, and then red, green, blue. So between all this, we've got two different sets of red, green, blue, white LEDs driven by separate PNET power boards, all controlled by our layout lighting board. The layout lighting board is connected with this red Ethernet cable to our home gateway router here. This particular one's a Netgear. I've got it plugged in the back, and we're using Wi-Fi to talk to our laptop. And we're using Firefox browser on our laptop to configure all of our scenes and presets, which we're about to learn about, as well as being able to monitor currently what's going on the layout, all the different lighting levels and dimmers. Because we are using Wi-Fi and it is a standard web browser interface, you can also use a tablet. In this case, this tablet is a Android tablet, and it's just a web browser launched out of the tablet, and I go to my web page, and this allows me to monitor all of my settings. Of course, we could easily set any of our levels, any of our presets, any of our scenes, and all that right from our tablet or from our laptop. So let's go onto our tablet, or let's go onto our laptop and actually do some configurations and show you how to set this up. So to begin with, what we do is we launch our web browser, and we're going to put in the IP address of our layout lighting board. In this case, it is 10.10.10.163. That will bring me to my home page, layout lighting homepage. On this page, you're going to see two primary buttons that you're going to use all the time, and that is the presets button and the sequence button. Let's start with the presets. A preset is really the way we set up our light levels. We have scenes and presets. A scene could be thought of as a grouping of lights or grouping of dimmers, depending on where it is on the layout. So in this case, I've actually got, I called it left side, front layout, side layout, back layout, and right side. And I gave it some notes. I called it west side of downtown, houses and high school, tennis courts, and I had a ski area on the side of the layout just for fun. And so for each of these, that would be my scene. You can think of it as the wharf or the harbor or a countryside or carnival or anything like that. So in this case, I've got, let's go to the front of the layout. In the case of the front of the layout, I've got a whole bunch of DMX dimmers down here, as you can see in the bottom. And those are the dimmers that are associated with that particular scene. A DMX dimmer is DMX 512. That would be the professional lighting interface protocol. The nice thing about DMX 512 is you can buy a lot of different lighting fixtures that support this interface, primarily made for the disc jockey DJ industry, for weddings and such, and quite economical. That's the DMX dimmers. Then over on here on the right side, I've got the PNET dimmers. These would be our PNET DC power controllers. In here I've got dimmers 17, 18, 19, and 20. I'm going to go back to the left side for a second here, and you're going to see that this one only has 4 DMX dimmers, and it has 8 PNET dimmers. So in this case, these 8 dimmers, 1 through 8, are actually exactly the same as the PNET DC power controllers we hooked up in the starter kit. So slot 0 on our PNET is dimmer 1 through 4. Slot 1 is dimmer 5 through 8. So that's how these dimmers work. If I needed to change which dimmers are associated with it, with this scene, I click down here, select dimmers. When I click that button, it's going to bring up a list of the dimmers. There can be up to 64 DMX dimmers and up to 64 PNET dimmers. And this is how I turn them on and turn them off. I can literally click left light, dimmer number 8, and that was DMX dimmer 7 and 8. So if I go back to adjust dimmers, you're going to notice that it brings up 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and 8. Now really I don't need 7 and 8, so we're going to go back to select dimmers. I'm going to turn 7 and 8 back off again by unchecking them. I can name these anything I want. In this case, I called it Bob1. And then over here on my peanut side, I've got them called red, green, blue, white, red, green, blue, white. And those, of course, are the same as the way we wired those peanut DC power controllers with the red, green, blue, white as dimmer 1, 2, 3, 4. Once I'm done creating my dimmer to scene associations, I go back to adjust dimmers. Notice that DMX dimmers 7 and 8 are now off of this list. Peanut dimmers 1 through 8. So that's pretty much how you create scenes, name your scene, and associate the dimmers that light that particular area or that particular scene. Now it's time to create some presets. Over here on the right side, I've got day, night, sundown, morning, all on. Those are just arbitrary names that I gave it. There's no specific meaning to those names. If I want to change the notes, I can double click on this and just say test, for example, and then that'll now be called the notes or test. When you select the different preset and the scene, you're going to see the levels down at the bottom that actually go with that particular preset. So the daytime, here I've got, red, green, blue, white. So white is up full blast. My red and my green are a little bit up, and my blue is a little down. But I didn't have the other peanut dimmers up, so I'm going to bring up my white. And actually, I think daytime's a little bit more blue. So we're going to take out my red and my green, and we're going to make them a little bit more blue. So by clicking on and sliding these sliders, I can set my dimmer value to literally anything from 0 to full on, which is 255. And I can adjust these while the presets are running, or I can literally view them on the scene directly by clicking preview mode. What preview mode allows you to do is actually, and you can see the button turns red as soon as I click on preview mode. What preview mode allows me to do is see the scenes and see the presets and actually watch these dimmer values changing right on the layout without having to imagine what this looks like. I can actually mix, just like paint. I can mix my colors exactly how I want. And that's one of the advantages of using the red, green, and blue and white strips, is I can mix really any color that I want. Once I've created that preset, I can actually turn my preview mode back off again, or turn preview mode back on. I can flip across the other presets, and you see over here what my dimmer values are doing. This is nighttime, should be very blue. Actually, I'm going to bring the blue down a bit. Red, green, blue, white. So no white. So let's get rid of the white. We're going to bring up the blue a little bit. Take these both down. So now I'm straight blue for night. I could go to sundown. Sundown's going to be probably still a little bit of white light. So I'll bring my whites up a little bit. And then I'm going to say sundown's got kind of some red in it. Probably not green unless it's a Martian sunset. And a little blue. So this is where preview mode becomes very handy, because you can actually see what you're doing. Editing these blind like we're doing right now is not very effective. So anyway, you get the idea. And then all on, I just turned all 4 on. So in this case, I'll bring the other 4 up. So now I've got literally all 8 peanut dimmers on full blast. That's my all on preset. So when I'm done, I just want to click preview mode to turn preview mode back off. I'm going to click save all preset data. This is a very important button. This is what actually writes all the configuration to the micro SD card on the layout lighting mainboard. So I'm going to say save all preset data. And you can see it brings up a little please wait while box while it's doing that. And then as soon as it's done, which takes about 6 to 10 seconds, it'll actually, that box will disappear and this button will turn back to purple. So that's all there is to it. We've now created some scenes, created some presets with some different light levels, and now it's time to actually put them onto the layout and actually make them do something. So we're going to click back to our Pricom Design logo, which will be our home page, and then we're going to go over to sequences. So we created some presets. Now we're going to go to sequences. In sequences, the layout of the screen is very similar. And in this case, we're going to have sequences on the left. Sequence is really a predefined set of steps that take some action on the layout. So in this case, I could create a sequence called sequence 1. I could create a sequence called shanty. I could create a sequence called pretty much anything I want. So in this case, I've got a preset called end layout. On the right side, I have a certain number of steps. You can have 64 sequences. Each sequence can have up to 32 steps. So in this first step, I actually said do nothing. So here, when I click on these, you'll see across the bottom, these are my sequence step actions. So we'll start with the beginning. Step 1. So I'm on the first sequence with the first step. I have a set of functions for each of those steps. I could do nothing. I could delay for time. I can wait for some kind of event. I can send an event to an outside device like a DreamPlayer Professional, or I could fade to a lighting preset. In this case, I've opted to do nothing, which is actually a completely valid thing to do, by the way, and we'll get back to that in a minute. So my second step is going to be a fade to a lighting preset. So I click on my function here, pull down, and I'm on my lighting preset. And I tell it how long do I want to fade? How long should it take to fade to that specific lighting preset? So we're working on the side layout. I'm going to trigger the side layout to fade to sunny day in 5 seconds. This could be 30 seconds. It could be any number. I'm going to set it to 30 seconds. So basically, the first event that happens in this sequence is actually triggered the side layout to fade to sunny day. The next thing I'm going to do is actually wait for some amount of time, delay for time. So in this case, I'm going to delay for 5 seconds. It could be 5 seconds, it could be a certain number of minutes and hours and seconds, but I'm going to make it 5 seconds. So I'll wait for 5 seconds. Then the next thing, my sequence step number 4, is actually take the side layout to cloudy day. Those were presets that we created in the other screen, in the preset screen. I can really fade to trigger any scene and any preset in any one of these steps of the sequence. So the idea is I could actually have a rolling sunset sequence that starts on one side of the layout and step by step rolls across the layout. In that case, I might want to do, say, 30 or 40 or 50 second fades, or maybe even a 10-minute fade, but start each one of those fades in each scene, say 5 or 10 seconds apart, and that would create a rolling sunset. So in this case, I'm going to go back and I'm going to say, all right, let's say day side, the side of the layout goes to sunny day, fades in 30 seconds. Then I'm going to wait for 5 seconds, and then I'm going to trigger the side of the layout to go to cloudy day. Now, if you notice, that I've actually created a problem for myself because I told it to fade in 30 seconds. Then I only waited 5 seconds. And then I told it to do the same scene for another fade. So that'll create kind of a weird situation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually change this back to a 5-second fade. And then maybe instead of wait for 5 seconds, I might wait for 10 seconds. And the reason that happens is I want to let the fade complete before I fade something else in the same scene. But the reason we gave you that flexibility is so that you could have different scenes actually stack on top of each other. You could create different presets in different areas and different scenes that all fade at different times. So basically, that's how you create sequence steps for each one of your sequences. I could create different sequences, of course, and each one of them has its own set of steps. Now, I want to go back to this do nothing at the first step again. So remember, our second step was actually to fade to a lighting preset. Since I didn't tell it to wait for anything at the beginning, it's just going to keep running this sequence over and over and over and looping around and around. So what I'm going to do is in the first step, I'm actually going to tell it to wait for an external trigger. So I'll say, first of all, wait for an event. I have different event types. I could trigger on a local event, like a local push button. I could trigger from a PNet event, some outside like block occupancy. I could trigger from fast clock event. I could trigger from a DCC mobile address. I could also trigger from a DCC accessory address. Example of that would be, I might know the secret code is trigger accessory 1234, and that'll cause a lightning storm to happen in the suburbs. So these are some of the ways that you can use this to really trigger some cool things. But I'm going to go with a local event for right now. And my local events are limited to the 4 local push buttons. On our layout lighting main board, if you remember, we have 4 local button inputs. So for this, I'm going to wait for trigger 1. So what will happen in this sequence is it will wait until the trigger 1 button is pressed once the trigger 1 button is pressed on the layout lighting board, then it will let the rest of the sequence run. And then when the sequence is completed, it will go back and sit here and wait again for that, that local trigger button. So there are other things we can use as sources. In fact, we could use the fast clock. So in this case, we'll use our LocoNet to PNet bridge board, which brings in the fast clock from a Digitrax LocoNet system. And I can tell it to wait until fast clock event hits a certain number of minutes. So let's just say 30 minutes. And so every half past midnight, this sequence would actually run. And that's kind of a crazy time of day to have a sunset sequence, so we're going to make it more like 6:30. So I set it for 6:30. Now every time it hits 6:30 p.m., actually that would be 6:30 a.m., so we'll make it 18:30. 18:30 is 6:30 p.m. Now it will actually trigger this sunset sequence, or this set of sequence. There are other cases where you might actually want to trigger every half hour. In those cases, I can actually put 99 for the hours. And what that means is any hour every 30 minutes. So every 30 minutes, exactly fast clock time, 30 minutes, on the 30-minute mark, this sequence will trigger. So this is how you can actually create all kinds of different events and sequences. Now, if I wanted to wait for a block occupancy detector, I could say wait for event, I could say PNet event, I could say slot 0 and trigger number 1. So that'll wait for the block occupancy detector, or the push button for that matter, for slot 0, button number 1, and then the sequence will trigger. So there's a lot of flexibility in what you can do with this. I could also delay for time, I could wait for an event, I could send an event. So a fun example of that would be, let's go down here a little toward the bottom. Let's actually trigger a barn sound. So I could actually send an event. So in this case, I'm going to send an event. I'm going to send it out my PNet. So I'm going to send a PNet trigger. And I'm going to send slot number 0, and I'm going to send it trigger number, let's just say 4. So what that's going to do is that's going to play track 4 on a DreamPlayer Professional, which is configured for slot 0. So part of my sequence could actually be triggering outside sounds. So perfect example, this would be my sunset. My sunset might fade from scene to scene, but those scenes may need to change from their day track to the night track, or even triggers change from crickets or from birds during the day to crickets at sunset, and then maybe at midnight or 11:30 or 12 o'clock at night, actually trigger some coyote sounds. This is how you can create these sequences. When you're done creating a sequence, or when you're done editing all your sequences, make sure to click Save All Sequence Data. This button will, again, write all the sequence information to the SD card on the layout lighting main board, and then every time I power up the system, it will remember all these sequences. Sequences are stored in a separate file from the presets. Those are all stored on the SD card in a text file. There's 2 different text files. You could easily back these up to your computer if you wanted to keep a backup, or keep a redundant copy. You could also make a copy if you needed to copy it to another board for some reason. So that gives you a pretty quick overview of how the presets and the sequences work. One other thing that's actually quite entertaining to watch is you click on this dimmer monitor. What this is actually going to show us is the current levels of all 64 DMX dimmers, as well as all 64 PNet dimmers. And you can see we're only updating about every 5 seconds or so. And these are showing you all the different sequences and all the different presets and how they're fading all at the same time at different rates, and gives you a pretty good view as to all the lighting effects that are going on your layout. And I could click my home page and actually get back to my home. So that's a quick overview of how to configure your presets and your sequences using a web browser through the layout lighting solution from Pricom Design. Hopefully that gives you a good idea of how flexible and powerful the Pricom layout lighting solution is for you. You can expand it by adding multiple PNet power boards to it. You can expand it by adding DMX512 dimmers to it, by adding DMX512 lights to it. You can use your tablet or your laptop to configure it and program it. And this allows you to really go directly into your layout room and set your levels exactly how they look. divide your scenes up as far as you can. Divide it so that your buildings are adjustable, so that your areas are adjustable, and you can mix colors to create any kind of scene, any kind of atmosphere that you'd want. And using some of the external trigger boards, such as the Loconet bridge, you can bring in Fast Clock and then trigger that rolling sunset and move it across the layout, trying to add that next level of realism to your layout. And we just hope that you have enjoyed this video. Please keep looking at our website. We are coming out with new products all the time. We'll be doing more videos, giving some more advanced applications and more features and more capabilities you can do with your layout lighting system. So please keep checking our website at www.pricom.com. Thanks for watching.